Good morning, everyone. It is, oh my head, 54 degrees here in the Manchester area. That's right, 54 degrees. Stay tuned for Weather with Al Caprillion to find out what kind of a fine day we're in for today. We do not believe you, and we are not stupid. That's what Pinardville resident and Plan Pinardville opponent Gaetan Benner wrote in a letter to Plan Pinardville ad hoc committee member Tony Marts. Marts, a local attorney who has been involved with several Goffstown development projects, issued a letter on Tuesday defending his participation on the ad hoc committee overseeing the development of the controversial master plan. Benner challenged Marts' representation that he'd only been marginally involved in development activity, citing his involvement in the mixed-use development involving Rite Aid and a swath of low-income housing developed by Greater Manchester Neighbor Works along Mast Road. She also wrote that his name was all over the documents on the controversial Moose Club apartment development that's building 48 apartment units in Pinardville. Benner wrote that eliminating the residential neighborhoods from the zoning proposal was, quote, just another attempt to fool us, end quote. She believes that if Mast Road is developed as proposed, traffic pressures will force bypass roads to be built and lead to the takings of backyards to create alleyways as envisioned in the plan. We've posted Benner's letter with this newscast at GirardAtLarge.com. It's an interesting read of the various issues neighbors have with the plan. We've also reposted Marts' letter. In a related matter, our friends at GoffstownToday.com are publishing a 5-part series on the proposed plan and members of the ad hoc committee. They've raised some interesting points and questions, not the least of which are the conflicts of interest that may exist between members of the ad hoc committee and the intentions of the proposed plan. Well, I'll tell you, one place that's not feeling the love right now is Pinardville. And Pinardville is, man, I saw John Heichel last night. He went to that same safety seminar that I went to that was hosted by Bob Bullard. Remember we did that interview?
Yeah.
So anyway, and he talked to me afterward. But I gotta tell you something. I think things are going to get a whole lot hotter here before long. I've posted the letter. It's kind of long. I don't think I have time to read it. But Gaetan Benner, who, along with her husband Dana, who was a guest on the show, and a handful of other residents, some of whom I met the other night when I was at the town hall for the ad hoc committee meeting, they are not amused, and they are not persuaded that the motion made, and I talked to Heichel about this last night. I said, John, you've narrowed the scope, and that's fine. But you haven't defined the uses yet. That's going to be the key. Because what you're talking about is what's happened over here with Rite Aid in this unmaintained park, and, 2 parcels, one of which has been sold and allegedly has a business coming in, and one of which they're waiting for. And by the way, the park's not going to be maintained until a 3rd business comes in. I said, correct me if I'm wrong, but my information was that none of that housing was supposed to be built until the commercial spots were sold and built. He said, well, that may be. I wasn't on the planning board at the time. I said, well, and we talked about the plan and the corridor. This thing isn't done. And Marts may have kicked over a hornet's nest. I mean, I have information, but she came out guns a-blazing. She's like, yeah, well, you say that you don't have a lot of clients in Goffstown. Well, having clients like St. A's doesn't stink. And that Rite Aid project was St. A's land that St. A's sold. So the neighborhood, I think the neighborhood is not going to back off at all because the scope has been narrowed. In fact, I think it might intensify that, because the concern really, as I understand it, has always been what happens to those residential areas and properties that surround this corridor that they want to develop. And when you take a look at the plan, you take a look at what they talk about, when they take a look at secondary roads, connectors, alleys, and things like that, if they're going to do a bunch of stuff like they did here and build things like Rite Aid and other destination spots like AutoZone or places where people are intentionally going to drive, and then they're going to layer in and fill in every space they can with some kind of multi-unit housing. Make no mistake, there's nothing in Plan Pinardville that talks about the additional creation of single-family homes. Not a thing. Not a thing. So if what they're going to do is do that, they are going to create such a traffic load on Mast Road that something's going to have to give. Mast Road is either going to become an arrested artery through which nothing moves, or they're going to have to take some of the existing connectors that already surround it, especially to the west. I'm sorry, to the east, and upgrade them and formally start to funnel traffic through them, which is going to have a negative effect on those neighborhoods. And more importantly, in areas where they don't exist, they're going to have to create them. It's not going to be a matter of nicety. It's going to be a matter of necessity. And so Goffstown has got to be very careful. You know, here we are presenting the so-called smart code and regulations, and this is the plan, and you've got a list of uses, but you haven't designated where anything can go. You're coming to the public with a list of things, and Heichel said, well, that's what the committee is going to work on, is designating what can go where and how it gets there. I said, well, that's fair, but you know, we can't blame, and not to say that he was, because he wasn't, but we can't blame the residents, particularly those whose properties would be at risk, whose properties would be in the firing line if the town came in and said, well, you know, we need to do this, and your backyard is going to be sacrificed on the altar of the traffic gods. So Goffstown's got to be very careful here. But, you know, the other question that nobody's really answered is, because this is all being done under the guise of sustainability. Can somebody tell me what's not sustainable about Pinardville? I mean, if you take a look at Pinardville, I mean, I would say it's safe to say that Mast Road is well down the transition from a residential to a sort of a small business commercial roadway. And that's fine. But, you know, the measure is not whether or not the measure of success here is not whether or not residents want to maintain their houses on Mast Road. I've not really heard any resident complaining about the traffic, and you know, it's not like in some places in Manchester. Oh, we've been here for 45 years, and we just wish the airport would go away. Oh, jeez. You're not hearing that. But what has been remarkably well preserved through all of this are all of the neighborhoods that run off of the side streets that connect to Mast Road. You know, they stirred up a hornet's nest when they said, hey, let's break through these dead ends and connect these roads. And the neighbors said, oh, no, you don't. What? Because that will. And so a lot of what they've proposed has to do with the flow of traffic and bringing it to places where it now is not. And that's why they've got to be really careful about what they do with the allowed uses in this so-called commercial industrial corridor, because if they don't, they will create a traffic loop that will backfeed into the neighborhoods. It will have to, and people will take the routes that there now exist, however poor they are, to bypass Mast Road, which will create a problem and a need to cut new roads and upgrade existing ones to get around the traffic. Once that's done, all those neighborhoods right now that still remain quiet, easy places to live, safe, and all that fun stuff, they're toast. They are toast. And the neighborhood knows that, which is why the neighborhood, I think, is only going to turn up the heat now. And guys like Tony Marts, who, again, I don't know. I have information on, I don't know. But they're going to take it squarely from people like the Benners, who in the letter say, oh, yeah, isn't it nice? Oh, this is not something that made the news read, but I'll just wrap it up on this. The sad part is Tony Marts doesn't even live in Pinardville, and he will not have to be stacked like a chicken or endure all of what these plans can bring. Mr. Mart, you should not be making these decisions for us. This is a very, very direct letter. This thing is this thing's going to be fun to watch, let me tell you. And the invitation to anybody, Tony Marts, pro or con, you want to come and talk about what you're doing, why, what you see as the future, why, and what's in the best interest of Pinardville, why or not, you have an open microphone here. You know where to find me, unlike your town who won't let me find you. Oh, by the way, I did speak with an attorney yesterday. The town can expect a letter. I am not amused. Russia!